Baz Luhrmann's Elvis premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in May of 2022, where it received a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest at the year's festival. The 2022 biopic on one of the most prolific singers of all time, aptly dubbed as the King of Rock and Roll, Elvis Presley, was the cumulative effort that took 8 years for its making. Elvis received positive reviews from critics, but Austin Butler's titular role as the king himself earned him critical acclaim. The American actor received raging reviews from critics who praised his performance as Elvis Presley, but it had people thinking, who is Austin Butler? Where do we know Austin Butler from? The name sounds all too familiar, probably because Elvis isn't Austin's first performance on the big screen. From Nickelodeon to the Cannes Film Festival, we're looking at the untold truth of Austin Butler. Who is he? Where do we know him from? And wasn't he the guy who was dating Vanessa Hudgens up until a few years ago? Before we get into it, be sure to give our video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content you wouldn't want to miss. All right, let's get started. Early beginnings. Austin Robert Butler, better known as Austin Butler, started his acting career back in the early 2000s with cameo roles in preteen and teen shows such as Hannah Montana, Zoe 101, Wizards of Waverly Place, and recurring roles in Switched, At Birth, and The Carrie Diaries. Butler landed his first regular acting job as Lionel Scranton on the Nickelodeon show Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. The role was hardly Butler's propelling role to mainstream fame. In fact, it took the actor another 6 years before he landed a recurring role. But in 2005, as Lionel Scranton, Butler became acquainted with Lindsay Shaw. Shaw had a leading role in the show as Jennifer Mose Mosley and introduced Butler to her manager, Pat Cutler. Close to calling it quits. The man Hollywood is raving about today nearly quit acting after his one-off role in a Nickelodeon show, had it not been for Cutler, who signed him on and launched his career. If you think you've seen Butler somewhere before, you wouldn't be alone. Austin Butler, while being a great actor, has only ever been in the headlines twice. Once in 2020 when Vanessa Hudgens confirmed that the pair had split up after nearly a decade together, and once in 2022 when Elvis premiered. But this wasn't the first we've seen of him. The actor has had several roles in Nickelodeon and Disney shows, but nothing further than an episode or two, or a season at best. The love interest plateau. Luckily enough, Butler was able to get out of the 2-episode love interest rut soon enough with a leading role in ABC Family's Switched at Birth. The show was the network's highest-rated debut with special mentions given to Butler's performance. But after 2012, it seemed like Butler's career hit another plateau. Critics claimed that while Butler had the undertakings of a lead character, his roles would often be limited to love interest for the show's leading ladies, and not lasting interests at that. Butler's characters were usually one-off roles that the writers would often use to expand upon the leading female character's journey of self-discovery. This happened again in 2013 when Butler was cast for the role of Anna Sophia Robb's love interest in the Sex and the City prequel series, The Carrie Diaries. The show lasted for 2 seasons, after which Butler was cast for the role of Willa Holland's love interest in Arrow. This seemed like a pattern for Austin. He'd auditioned for the leading role, but would instead be called back for an audition for a love interest. It's something that followed the actor from his earlier days, doing preteen and teen shows. Butler played Miley Cyrus's love interest in Hannah Montana, Miranda Cosgrove's love interest in iCarly, and Jamie Lynn Spears' love interest in Zoe 101. That's why Butler seemed familiar to people. They've watched him growing up, but not enough for him to be remembered. Did Elvis change that? Indeed it did. But before we talk about Butler's rise to mainstream stardom and critical acclaim, we might want to look at the actor's best role as a love interest to date, his decade-long relationship with Vanessa Hudgens. 2011 to 2020, Austin Butler and Vanessa Hudgens. The pair sparked dating rumors back in 2011 after they were seen kissing during a trip to Miami. Later that same month, the pair confirmed their relationship when they sat together and were all over one another at a Lakers game. From that point on until 2020, the pair walked every red carpet hand in hand. Their nearly decade-long relationship was the talk of the town, probably because a relationship that lasted as long as theirs was a rarity in Hollywood. All good things must come to an end, and in 2020, the pair announced that they had decided to split up after 9 years together. Why did they break up? Sources close to the couple revealed that Butler's role as Elvis Presley might have had something to do with it. Butler was signed on for the role of the king himself back in 2019 after he bested several notable names for the role: Ansel Elgort, Miles Teller, and Harry Styles. However, Baz Luhrmann made one thing clear: the role had to be a replication of Elvis's life and not an imitation of it. According to Butler, he trained for 2 years with singing coaches, voice coaches, and karate instructors to perfect his role as the rock and roll giant. But the role also had him traveling to Australia, where the first few scenes of the film were to be shot. Notwithstanding that fact that Elvis was Butler's big break, sources revealed that it put a strain on the couple's relationship. The pair never really gave fans a reason for the breakup. Instead, they insisted that the split was amicable and that they had a lot of respect for one another. What they failed to mention, however, was the fact that they couldn't seem to see eye to eye with their conflicting work schedules. Some sources went as far as suggesting that this was Butler's first leading role and Hudgens wasn't able to adapt to the change. Do you think there's any truth to that statement? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Moving on, in less than a few months. Needless to say, the couple split up after nearly a decade together and were seen with new partners less than a few months into their breakup. Butler was seen leaving a yoga class with Cindy Crawford's daughter, Kaya Gerber, in December of 2021. The pair made their official Hollywood debut a few months back, later at the 2022 Met Gala event. Interestingly enough, Hudgens moved on just as quickly with MLB star Cole Tucker. In December of 2021, the High School Musical alum posted a picture with Tucker and captioned it, "1 year down." Butler and Hudgens had reportedly split in January of 2021. Awkward. What's more awkward was that Butler stayed mum about the breakup only revealed to GQ magazine that life is full of changes, suggesting that the breakup was imminent and that all anyone could really do was evolve. The exes allegedly had a brief encounter at the 2022 Met Gala where Butler was with Gerber and Hudgens was solo. We don't know what went on between the two at the event, but sources suggest that the pair acted cold towards one another. Butler as the king of rock and roll. What's done is done. 2022 is looking to be Butler's year. Elvis is receiving raving reviews and is projected to make well over $100 million at the box office, with $30 million on its opening weekend. But in the world of musical biopics, did we really need another? Suffice to say that a biopic on the king of rock and roll has already been done, more than once actually. Luhrmann is late to the party, but the party didn't start until he walked in. That's a tall order for a director, but the Australian director put Butler to work with the role. Butler bested several notable names for the titular role and had to train to become Elvis Presley for 2 years. In the newly revived genre of biopics, it was only time until someone did one on Elvis Presley. For the role, Butler says he had to memorize Presley's mannerisms, the way he walked and the way he talked, with respect to Presley's notable way of communicating. Butler said that he had to watch and then rewatch several of the King's interviews from various years. According to the young actor, Presley's voice changed throughout the years, and Butler wanted to imitate the voice closest to every year. Priscilla Presley's approval. Signing on for the role of Elvis was a big deal. What was even bigger, according to the man who had to play the legend, was receiving Priscilla Presley's stamp of approval. Priscilla was married to Elvis from '67 until 1973. After their marriage ended, the two shared a friendship and were involved in each other's lives as friends and co-parents. When Priscilla approved Butler's training for the role of her ex-husband, the young actor knew he was on the right path. After the film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, people had a lot of questions for Austin, and his answers revealed a lot about his methodology for the role and everything that it took for fans to revisit Elvis Presley's life for 90 minutes. Butler revealed that the hardest part about filming was mimicking some of Presley's notable movements. While videotapes and recordings existed back then, most Elvis Presley memorabilia comes in the form of pictures. For Butler, bringing life to those pictures was probably the hardest part. However, the actor had a phenomenal movement coach who helped him dissect Presley's movements inside and out. Next came Presley's prolific tone. And we're not just talking about his singing here, we're talking about the way he articulated himself in interviews. Butler sat through every interview of the rock and roll legend and would search endlessly for anything that had even the slightest connection to Elvis. Demanding roles and deteriorating health. If you think Austin's dedication to the role is admirable now, wait till you find out how long he prepped to audition for the role. Place your bets and pause this video here. You ready? Austin Butler spent 5 months preparing for his audition. So essentially, Butler's training for the role of Elvis Presley goes back to 3 years. His excruciating training eventually took a toll on him. The day after Elvis finished filming, Butler was reported to be in unimaginable pain and needed to be rushed to the hospital immediately. There, he was diagnosed with appendicitis-like symptoms and was bedridden for a week. According to Austin, his symptoms were a result of his body shutting down after his role as Elvis Presley ended. That's right. Butler suggested that playing the role of a man who had been immortalized in music took such a huge toll on him that his body physically gave up once he had to revert back to his original self. Speaking of which, Austin Butler told Elle Australia that he still hasn't managed to switch off his role as Elvis. The actor claimed that certain triggers would have him automatically switching back into character. He said that after having been obsessed with Elvis Presley for close to 3 years, it was hard for his body to readjust to his regular movements and speech. Butler's family claims that he doesn't sound like himself anymore. We're wishing things regain some semblance of normalcy for Austin, and we're excited to see where he goes from here. This was the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon alum's first big role on the big screen, which he carried astonishingly well. Austin Butler. We're signing off for now, but let us know your reviews for Elvis in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. We'll talk with you next time.